Interesting to me that the last interview I did for CBS Sunday Morning was
Yes.
with an actor named Martin Sheen.
That's so great. I mean, I love him so much.
Why is he important in your life?
Oh, we were teenagers together. We met in Manhattan in the '60s. No, it was actually the '50s, late '50s. And I was studying with my mentor eventually, Charlie Lawton, who not the Charlie Lawton from movies.
Not Charles Lawton.
Charles. His name was Charlie Frank Lawton.
Gotcha.
And we were working together, and we were in the class, at the HBO studios, Herbert Burgo Studios. It was on 23rd and 6th Avenue. And one day, a fella came in. His name was Martin Sheen. Why he came to that place and why he knew of Charlie Lawton, I'll never know. But he had heard about him because Charlie's teachings were getting a name, making a name for themselves.
Yeah.
So, and then he came in and he did that great soliloquy from The Iceman Cometh, Eugene O'Neill's. It's historic. I recommend it. Just that monologue alone, what he did. And then Marty does this interpretation of it. Well, I was bowled over. I had never seen anything like it. I thought, this is the greatest actor I've ever seen. And he reminded me of James Dean too, who was his, I believe, was his idol.
Definitely
I
his
think,
idol.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he came from a big family, Marty. And we just got it, palled around, and we liked each other so much. And then, we were both very poor, so we shared an apartment. My old apartment in the South Bronx, where all the family I had moved out already uptown, and I was still there.
And then Martin Sheen moved in.
Then he was in with, his brother was in, I knew this other guy was in, and so we, at one point, at my house, there was, I was leaving. I never participated in, except for Marty Sheen, but most of the other people that went in and out of my apartment, I'd say hello and stuff, but I would usually not be around for it. But one day, I remembered this girl that was there who was a friend of this guy's girlfriend, and this guy was living with me, and there it was Joan Baez anyway, playing the guitar.
Oh.
And this is before she met Dylan, I think.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
It was really something. I'll never forget her eyes.
Yeah, and Marty helped you, right? I mean, when things were going well for him and not well
Marty,
for you.
the image I have of us in the apartment was we went to some beach. I think it was Rockaway, far Rockaway. It took about an hour and a half to get there by train, and it was fun because I could do all the reading I wanted on the train. And me and Marty went out there, and then we were hungry, always hungry, and we went out digging for clams. And we got these clams, we brought them home, and we were really excited. And I remember it was full of sand. The clams were sandy. So it was hard to eat them. So I was in my kitchen, I had the faucet on. There's the image of me putting the clams under the water to get out the sand. I thought, what have we come to, Marty? Maybe we get 2 or 3 clams out of it, but
You were poor.
yeah.
I mean,
Oh yeah,
but
everybody is. All actors are poor till they get filthy rich.
well, then in your case, you kind of get poor again. So you mentioned that you and Marty Sheen lived in that apartment in the South Bronx. That's where you grew up.
That's where I grew up. Yeah.
So you describe your life there. You had your friends, you had your gang, not like a gang of roving toughs,
No.
but like your boys.
Yeah.
And this was a nice life.
Yeah. When I was reading it, my memory of it is too. We were a group that hung and had, a lot of. We had a lot of fun. I'm talking 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old. They were fervent years, for me, and the friendships and the connections and the love we had between us. I only realized later it buoyed me up in the environment I was in, which was fine. I mean, I was used to it. It was there, and it was. We did have a neighborhood though that when you went a block or two either way, you had trouble. So
You were like on another
turf.
right? Yeah. Who were your pals? Who were your best pals?
Well, my best pals there, as you know, they come out in the book too. Was Cliffy and Bruce and Petey, and they're the memory I have. Of course, there were others. There was.
But these guys, Petey, Bruce, Cliffy, these guys were important to you.
Oh yeah, they were my life source. A lot of things happen in the book with us that were kind of adventurous, and the trips we would go out. And Cliffy was, in a way, the more or less the leader.
Yeah.
Although we were all, but he drove it, and he was this kid with the IQ through the roof. He walked around with Dostoevsky in his pocket. He was like 12, 13 years old, running around with the Russians. I mean, he had Tolstoy in there. Of course, my life changed when I saw a Chekhov play called The Seagull.
So, and although this was a good group of friends and you guys had a lot of fun, there was a moment that things started to, as they got older, right?
Yeah.
Like some of the recklessness started to get a little more dangerous.
Yeah. Well, we were in danger periodically when we crossed paths with certain, people from other neighborhoods. And so I think there's a passage in the book where I explain the comfort we had together.
Yeah.
Certain things wouldn't have happened to me if they were with me at the time they happened. But the general, the ambience was playful. And a lot of those stories are just funny, crazy.
Yeah, I mean, but it got a little. There was a.
Well, he liked stealing cars.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but to show up in a big garbage truck, I mean, please.
He'd steal a garbage truck.
I mean, he did, and that was one of the things. And of course, he kept. There was a gradation there, but he had an energy and a vitality.
One night, a bunch of the guys are calling up to you, right? What everybody call you?
Well, they call me Pachi sometimes, or Sonny a lot of the times, and they would be out for the night. They were going to have fun. They were going to find some adventure. Something was going to happen, and I was in the bathtub, and it was a school night.
I mean, so they're going out on adventure. It's like Tuesday.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like Tuesday.
Yeah, yeah.
And so when it's maybe the middle of winter or whatever, they're going to do something. So. I missed the camaraderie too. Something was always interesting with that. And my mother said, "No, you're not going out."
So they're calling up like, "Sonny, come down."
Come down, and she said, "No." I was so upset, so angry at her, and I would get angry when she. And you realize what it is for a single mother to deal with that, in an environment that was dictating what her child was going to do next, And she did, I think she was part of what saved my life and kept me off drugs.
Because how did it...
She had discipline, and I couldn't go out. I went to school. I was getting an award. I was in my 50s. So I was getting this award. I forget what it was for. Just hanging around long enough or something. It was a big award. And I had to go and say something, a speech. And I was thinking, I was shaving. And I had all this shaving cream on me. I'm looking in the mirror and thinking, I got to trying to write this speech. And I thought, simple. It's my mother. I had a realization then. See how life is? Then. Only then. I thought, I'm here because of my mother. She saved my life.
Because...
And I have to thank her, I mean, it was true. And the fact that it would dawn on me after so many years. I mean, I loved her, so that was there, and I felt close to her, but that she saved my life was...
So explain how she saved your life, because these three guys, I know it's hard to talk about, but you wrote about it. So they met a tragic end.
Yeah, all drugs. Yeah.
So that means heroin.
Which is
Probably.
heroin. Yeah. It was prominent in the neighborhood.
All three of them. All three of your closest
yeah.
pals. Overdose.
Not at the same time, at different times,
But not that far apart from each other either. Yeah.
with such potential they all had too. Like so many people today, whatever it is.
And you think it sounded reasonable in the book. It sounds reasonable talking to you here that if your mom is not the kind of mom who says, "Damn it, it's Tuesday," you would have gone out.
Yeah.
And then you would have, one thing would have led to another, and who knows?
Yeah.
Well, what's your mother's name?
Rose.
She did not live long enough to see your success.
No, my grandfather.
How'd your mom die?
I never really know, so I like to try to understand it from another point of view, and I believe in this point of view, by the way, that it was what Tennessee Williams died of. It's a kind of you take too many drugs, and then if you take too many, then you take it, mix it, whatever she was doing. But I know that's how a lot of people have passed. So
it was an accidental overdose.
I thought it was.
Yeah.
I never saw that in her thing. Although she did attempt early on in my life, she attempted.
So she'd already attempted suicide,
Yeah,
but she didn't write a note here or anything.
No,
so,
no.
But she was depressed, right? So, So the mixing of drugs to help her sleep with booze, like that she was self-medicating.
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah. What did her death do to you?
Oh, well, it came at a certain time, and I was bereft, and I found life. Dealing with death it was more shocking at that time because I've experienced so much of it in life. If you keep going, you're going to see a lot of death. So you find a way to acclimate in a way, but it's too much. It's one of the things that pull me down all the time, because even in New York, when I was in New York the last time, I was in a taxi and I'm seeing, the streets that I know and walk up and down, and even on Park Avenue, and I'm looking around and I'm seeing, oh, that's where so-and-so used to live, or so-and-so lived up there. And it closes in on you. You don't have that reference, that point of reference. So it brings you down, and it's not the same for you anymore. The city itself is people.
Yeah, of course, yeah. So I don't have the timeline exactly, but it struck me that your three closest friends and your mother, they all died pretty close to the same way within a pretty short period of time in your life. Yeah. I mean, you're like 20 or 21. I mean, you're young. You're a young man. You're not
21, I think.
Yeah, you've not had a lot of success, but because it's not long afterwards that you sort of figure out that, like, the light bulb goes on when you're on stage, right?
Yeah. Well, I was on stage in school, junior high school, and I found that this Blanche Rothstein, who was my 8th grade teacher, actually came to my house, my apartment, and spoke with my grandmother.
And she, like, you lived on the
top floor. It was 6 floors high.
And it's a walk up, right? There's no elevator.
No elevator.
Yeah.
But she came all the way up there, and she sat down and talked to my grandmother. What she said, I don't know, but I think it finally came down to, you should encourage this boy to do what he's doing, the acting. You have to. He is made to do this, or something like that. We were so poor. She comes up, and she was talking to people who probably had, had access to me and had the ability to understand the value of it. My mother was very intelligent, and she was at work, my mother, and my grandmother must have told her. But I remember that she was a little worried about it. Then it happened again in performing arts.
So but it's an amazing thing to have a teacher take time after school to walk up to your place, go up
right.
six flights of stairs to make sure that your parent.
I mean, it brings tears to my eyes now because that this is a great position to be in life, to be a teacher, the opportunity to help kids, to encourage. Encouragement is my favorite word.
So you're like 13 or 14 years old when this happens, 8th grade.
No, I was a little younger than that. I think 13 or something.
Yeah.
12, 13, yeah.
So 13 years old. It's just a gift that this Blanche Rothstein
Yeah.
gave, right?
Yes.
And you'd done well in these plays, right? I mean, I know you had a class. You told me this last time when we first met that you had a kid there who was like, "Hey, you're going to be the next Marlon Brando."
No, I was in junior high school. I did a play. I believe it was a play called Home Sweet Homicide, and I played one of the kids in it, and that are looking for we had a detective. We're looking for a murder that happened and I did this part, and I was over, and some guy came up to me. I'll never forget it. An adult, and said, "Hey, kid, you're going to be the next Marlon Brando." And I said, "Who's Marlon Brando?" Who's he talking about? So it was, it had to be around 13. And then my mother and father came to the theater, actually together. They never saw each other, of course, except in court at the end. But I'm backstage. Somebody told me, "Hey, Sonny, your mother and father are in the audience." I said, "My mother and father? I have a mother, I have a father, but I don't have mother and father." You know what I mean?
Right, yeah, totally.
So I thought, wow, I was so nervous performing. To this day, I get nervous if I know somebody is in the audience watching me, somebody close to me or who I know. I tell them, "Please don't tell me you're coming."
Oh, so you don't want to know, like
I don't want to know who's
when
in
you
it, no.
like when Elizabeth Taylor's in the audience.
Oh,
You don't want any.
No.
All right. Yeah. You quit school. How old were you when you dropped out of high school?
I was 16.
Did you drop out to become an actor?
Yeah.
That was the
What
plan?
worked for my mother needed money, and by that time she was living with me.
Your grandparents had moved.
They had moved, and then,
but just a couple miles away or
a
something.
couple of miles away, and then she went to live with them, and I would give, sort of the money I made, I'd give there.
Would you? So I love your jobs. Tell me some of the jobs you had,
jobs.
like between 16 and 27.
I look fondly on that time. I can't help it. There was something about it that was rich. It was the 60s, and everything was happening in the village. Everything. It was a renaissance. And I was so influenced by the cafes, sort of like Paris in the early 1900s. These cafe shops were open. There was, Jackson Pollock and Allen Ginsberg and all, Kerouac and all.
Artists are everywhere.
All everywhere.
Yeah.
So the very temperature, the atmosphere was so full of it. It was impossible not to be inspired from it.
So what jobs did you have?
But the jobs I had, well, I was an usher a lot.
You
Because
were
that's movies, right?
Right.
And I was an usher. I was in a lot of different jobs. All actors have different jobs, Most of them, when they talk, but I made a profession out of having different jobs. I was an usher, and there I was, and a lot of the ushers in that at that time had 2 or 3 jobs, So the usher would come up to me and say, I was young, so he'd say, "Watch out for me when they come and let me know. I gotta sleep." And he'd go up there and sleep because the guy had 3 jobs, 10 kids, and so I'd be there. And I got caught up in the 4-way mirror. You see, there was a candy counter there. It's really vivid in my mind. And there were 4 mirrors. And I would look in those mirrors and I would say, "What? This is how I look?" I could see how I looked from the side. I could see how I looked from 3/4. And I kept thinking, what? I can't be an actor. All right, look at me, look at me. You know, and the manager would fly by once in a while. He was big, sort of white hair, and he was had a lot of presence. And he'd say, "Stop that! Don't look in the mirror like that.
Don't look at yourself in the
Yeah,
mirror.
don't look at yourself in the mirror." What? I said, "Oh no, sorry." But and there was this circular stairwell that was like out of Gone with the Wind. I mean, it was so. It was an old vaudeville house, you know. And I was looking. He caught me looking again. I couldn't. I was obsessed with it. And as he was coming down the stairwell, he just looked at me and said, "You're fired." And he just kept going. He didn't break stride. He just went. And I thought that's so elegant.
Oh,
to be fired like that. I was smiling.
You got fired with panache.
Panache. It
Yeah.
was so beautiful.
You got fired from Carnegie Hall, right? As an usher? I mean, you
Yeah,
got to be the worst
I
usher.
well, I was in this Carnegie Hall place. I don't know how I got, you know.
This Carnegie Hall place. It's Carnegie Hall.
It's Carnegie Hall. I was, you know, so I had this tuxedo on, and they liked, you know, I was relatively good looking, and they put
Relatively,
Yeah,
yeah.
But you get to hear concerts too. I mean, that was amazing. I was really, I was nuts over music, of classical music. And one day we were doing, they were doing a Jamaican concert. I wonder if anybody that was alive at that moment is watching this. All I can know is I was up there in the balcony. And, so
And you loved this music. This was great, right?
Yeah, well, the Jamaican music, yeah, I wanted to see that. But I would be hearing everything, Stravinsky, Mozart. It was great. So I was up there, and the balcony just goes up on an incline. So if you're up here on the balcony, you still can hear it and see it. So there were these people coming in, you know, to see the concert, and I was supposed to seat them
In their seats.
in their seats.
Yeah, okay. It's the
Because
job. It's the job of an usher. Al.
It is the job of an usher,
Okay.
finally.
Yeah. Right.
But I didn't last doing that. I just didn't have the heart to do it. I thought, like, everybody can see. So it started with the things, and people started arguing a little bit. I said, well, if you're and I was doing this, I said, sit anywhere you want. I said, I mean, you got a better seat if you're up further than when you're down. But these
You were
people-
making it first come, first served.
Yes, I turned it into, for my benefit, of course.
right.
So, yeah, and then pretty soon they were fighting. And then there was a fist fight and a riot.
And
On the spot, I was gone.
you got fired right then.
Right there, yeah.
Yeah.
I love those. Those are the best ways to go. I mean,
So,
no time to think.
so I think creditors, August Strindberg's
Yes.
creditors. So you've been acting in plays, but what happens in this?
Well,
is
what happened to me, of course, was this is New York City. So much going on, you know. But just to cover that, I saw this play in New York City with one of my friends, Brucey. We had to be 14, like that, and I saw this Chekhov play called The Seagull, and it took me. It just took me, and I went out and got his short stories. I don't know. It was just. And I think it had a lot to do with my steps in life. You know, you have these things, you got traumas and you have these epiphanies. You know. So I went up there and I got into a place called the Actors Gallery, which was in the off-Broadway vicinity, if you could find it. The reviewer once said, if you could find the place. It was now where Soho is. There was no such thing as Soho when we did the thing. Anyway, I'm doing creditors. And the part was, you know, a little bit over my head. I didn't quite get the role, but I started to work on it, work with the company on it. But sooner, I started to feel it. And I felt, I must have been 21, like that, but for the first time in my life, I felt there's something in me that's coming out. There's something about this great play with, you know, Strindberg was coming through me, and I could feel it. It was like speaking. It's like learning how to speak what's in you. And it came on a dime. I mean, I didn't know anything about this. I never studied for that kind of thing. but it took over my body. And I remember knowing that I could talk. I said, I'm never going to do anything else but this. I have found it. This is what has been kind of vacant in me, a void was filled. Like when I had kids for the first time, a void was filled. So it had a similar, but it happened earlier. I didn't have kids. And that took me over, and I thought, this is it. I don't care what happens to me. Whether I succeed, not succeed, didn't matter. I had this.
Yeah, you write that like all of a sudden I could eat. I mean, like maybe I'll be able to eat or I won't eat. Maybe I'll have money or I won't have money.
Exactly.
Maybe I'll become famous. Maybe I won't. Doesn't matter.
Didn't matter.
Because
That's the freedom. Because I found what I wanted to do in life. This was where I belonged.
so
Even though I had done it and I got great encouragement from people from time to time,
but this was something else. This was a different feeling.
this was something else.
Yeah.
I knew I went somewhere.
So I get struck by little things when I read a book. And there aren't a lot of books like yours. Yours is very candid. So very open.
Very what?
Candid.
Candid.
Candid. Very open. Very, and which makes it feel authentic.
Yeah.
So you'd been in a small role in one movie, but you have a chance for your first significant role in a film, a leading part in a movie called Panic in Needle Park.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're going to get this part probably, but it's not set in stone yet. Nothing is signed.
That's right.
And then you get asked to read a play. Just with a bunch of other actors in front of an audience, you're going to read the play.
Yeah,
right?
they did that. They would have readings
Yeah.
sometimes of plays.
Yeah, and then there's a moment where the ball's on you for a guy who'd never been in a movie is really something. Because you talk about seeing people in the audience.
Yeah.
Who do you see in the audience for this play reading?
First of all, I don't know who got me this point, because these are people who run the theater and people in the play that I've never met, and
Right.
someone knows me. How would they know me?
You'd never read this play before. You're about to
No.
read it cold.
I had to read it cold, which is, and I don't even know why I did it, because it was there, but I usually wouldn't do something like that. And I looked out in the audience and I saw the people from Panic in Needle Park, the producer, the couple of people that wrote it together,
Just John Gregory Dunn and Joan Didion.
and Joan Didion,
Yeah.
and they're great. They were great, and John Dunn, and they had a couple of others, and I saw them, and I thought, they're here for me. I didn't get the part yet. They're here to audition me in a way, see how I do. Well, I had nothing to do with the play. I didn't know it. I had no idea. I'm not a cold reader. So I knew I had to do something. And
You need to make it clear. You did not want them to see you do this
Oh, no,
while
I want-
because you wanted that job in the movie.
Exactly.
All right, so
So I just got up and I went over to them and I just said, I'm sorry, you have to go because I can't do this in front of you. I know.
I'm
you're
sorry,
here.
Joan Didion, John Gregory Dunn, Nick Dunn, his brother, the producer
Yeah,
of
yeah,
Panic in Needle Park.
yeah.
You're going to have to leave.
Yeah, I did it. I have to say it worked. And they actually all got up. When I think of it in retrospect, I think, oh, what I did to those poor people, I can't help it. But at the time, the thing I learned from growing up is when you see danger, you gotta do something about it. You gotta go, because so I did, and I'm sure they remembered it, and then I got the part.
You got the part. You were really good.
Because I had Jerry Schatzberg, too,
Right.
great director, who directed a great friend of mine now till this day. And that film he did it's a sweet film.
And if you don't have Panic in Needle Park, odds are Francis Ford Coppola might not have reached out to you for
Well,
Godfather.
Francis saw me in a play
Yeah.
that I actually won a Tony for at that age. I won a Tony for a play called Does a Tiger Wear a Necktie? And that was a big thing. And I had Marty Bregman by that time. Because you see, the India Wants the Bronx was my debut, in a sense. That's where
That's the play.
Yeah, I was in repertory theater in Boston, and my life was gonna be, I do rep, I do different plays, I marry a seamstress, and I go on to have 10 kids. That was my dream.
Why is she a seamstress in this
Because
story?
they work in the theater, you know, and actresses are great, but they go away and bang, but somebody who stays with you, I don't mean that for actresses, but they do well.
I
They
got
do
you.
fine.
Yeah. So that play
got Francis. He didn't even come backstage. I was in New York. I didn't know who Francis was. I knew the people that would come back. I had Sidney Poitier come backstage and encourage me. It was a great encouragement. I became a friend. So once you're on Broadway and you're doing a part you can do, you get a lot of action. You're in a position to, in those days. I don't know about now.
So the Indian wants the Bronx. Who plays the Indian in New York?
Well, we had John Casale.
That's where you met him.
Yeah.
And right away, you're like, this guy's different.
No, I met him at Standard Oil because we were both messages.
Another job, right? Yeah.
We were messages, and I loved John. John was like an intellectual to me, and like he knew all about politics, which I know nothing about, and he was so interested. Everybody loved this guy. I did too. I just loved the way he was, and we got to know each other, and it was fun.
Francis sees you in Tiger, but he definitely saw Panic in Needle Park. I mean, he's not gonna.
I wonder if he did.
He had to have. He had to have. I mean, he's making a movie. That was your first movie, for all intents and purposes.
Didn't come out yet.
It hadn't been out yet.
It hadn't been out yet, and this is what happened. Jerry Schatzberg said they audition you and they want some stuff for you, because we were all auditioning in a scene that everybody did. It was like an exposition scene, and everybody was the same in it, so they couldn't. So anyway, Jerry Schatzberg offered him 8 minutes from Panic in Needle Park, and that 8 minutes sort of got me the part.
In Godfather.
Yeah.
Francis wanted you, but
Nobody else did.
I was about to say the list.
I didn't want me. When he called me up and said to me, "I'm doing the Godfather," I know a little bit about it. I read the Godfather book, and I thought, "Wow, this is amazing. This book, and it's going to be the biggest film." They're all talking about it, and I'm looking for usher jobs, and I'm thinking, okay, and I'm living with Jill Clayburgh by that time, and we had a great time together. So my life's doing all right. I'm working. I'm getting.
You're on the stage. You'd won a Tony.
Yeah,
right.
of course. And so I'm doing all right. And this guy calls me out of nowhere because the Tiger had me for another part in another movie. He didn't get the Godfather yet. So Tiger, he wanted me to play a professor, a college professor. And
that was going to be Francis's next movie.
Yeah, a wonderful script it was. He wrote Patton. He won an Oscar for Patton. He's a really good writer. So they didn't want me, and they didn't want him, and Warner Brothers. We were there. So we said bye. We had spent 3 or 4 days together. See, that's good for an actor, to be with a director 3 or 4 years. No, not years, days. And engage with them, exchange ideas and stuff, and just talk about things. So that probably was an advantage to me. Anyway, he calls, says he has the Godfather, and I actually thought that he maybe, was slipping. I really thought they want him to direct the Godfather.
Hey.
He's got the delusion. He's delusional. So I thought, well, I'll just humor him at the time. And then I started to think about it. I thought, Paramount, they're very smart to pick this guy, because not only is he an Italian, but he's a genius, this guy. I really felt it from the first time I met him. So they picked well. And then he says that he wants me to play Michael. Then I thought, oh, he's in trouble or something. I mean, you have to understand, actors in New York at the time, it's even different now, because there are more actors today working, thank God, in the streamers and everything else. But I thought, what am I going to do? he wants me. So I called my grandmother. I said, I think I'm going to be in The Godfather. My grandmother, who says, oh yeah, that book, yeah. She didn't read it, but she had this thing about it, knew it. She says, yeah, Granddad, my grandfather, was born in Corleone.
You'd never heard that.
I never heard it in my entire life. I mean, you know, this is America, you know what I mean? And I thought, is that, you know, and it's true, he was there. He was born there. So I thought, this is getting crazy, isn't it?
Right, now it's interesting. It just got interesting, right.
Yeah, it just got interesting.
But still, nobody else wanted you. No one except Francis.
Yeah, just Francis. And I have to say, Ruddy.
Al Ruddy.
Al Ruddy.
Yeah.
And even in, you know, those who saw me on stage, by that time, Marty Breckman was representing me, the great producer, agent. He handled Barbra Streisand, Judy Garland, and all these people, and he had me in his. He saw Indian, and he see, my life has all these little places, little boosts. How I got to a certain place is on the backs of a lot of people.
Well, the story of how you got Michael and how, because the studio wanted, like Jack Nicholson, Warren Beatty.
Yeah.
Give us a name of a young,
And they
established
wanted
guy.
Redford.
Redford, right.
These are great actors, of course,
Yeah.
and they're doing. But in his mind was me, and I was feeling always that okay, and I even said to him at one point, I said, you know, I had an agent now, I had a manager, you know, lining up Serpico and things like that was coming in my area. I was in a certain area, and nobody knew me really outside of the New York place. And I said, Francis, you don't have to, it's okay, Francis. I said, you know, I don't want to be where I'm not wanted anyway. You know, it's a kind of awful feeling.
Yep.
You know, to be, yeah, and you know, everybody looking at you like, and but he hired me and they took me anyway. And it was Panic in Needle Park, 8 minutes of that convinced them to do it. But he was going all the way with me and Brando. They didn't want Brando at all.
This comes up often in your career. You don't really want to do anything. I mean, your instinct is to say no.
Well, yeah.
And so what?
My instinct to say no is because I don't feel that I'm right for the role. That's my instinct. And when I go against that, it shows up. I have always felt that I was, like all actors, there's certain parts, and I wanted to play certain parts. Some I wanted to play just to try it. I'd take a chance with something. Yes, I've done that. But I say no because I don't believe I can do it. Someone can do it better, meaning someone who belongs to it better.
On The Godfather, you'd never met Brando, right? But Francis thought you guys should meet.
We all met when we all went to Patsy's in Harlem when Francis put the whole cast together.
Right.
And as the evening went on, each of us started becoming the parts we were playing. Actors, you put them together, they do it. So it was a very interesting thing to see because I became the quiet, almost sullen one, and Jimmy was more.
Moving around the table and yeah.
But they were great because they were so helpful to me. They knew about this stuff going on, and they were so supportive.
Yeah, so I didn't mean you met him, but you hadn't really had a one-on-one conversation
No,
with him.
of course not.
So Francis wanted you and Marlon to have a meal, talk. Yeah.
During the shooting.
Yeah, where did you have this meal?
In a hospital.
At the hospital where he's
It
going.
was where he's dying.
Where he's been after he's been shot.
Yeah. So we sat down and we had one of those meetings, and
Lunch in the hospital.
lunch in hospital.
What'd you have?
Oh, you're getting to that. I had the chicken cacciatore on Marlon. I hate to say things about him. And this is fine. You know, I
think it it's
it's
such,
a great thing to hear about.
Yeah, totally.
About because I'm sitting there with, you know, let's face it, if there was anyone who was an idol in my life, let's face it, it was him. All of us, we all were just driven by this great originality and power of performing. I mean, it was new.
He changed acting on the stage, and then 4 years later, he changed it
I
in the
think
movies.
he was responsible for that. I mean, there are great actors around, you know that. They're all over the place, and they've lived before, you know, and I've seen them. But when you go to the history of cinema, the magnetism of this person and the roles he played, he was so much fun to watch.
All right, so you're having lunch.
All right, so I'm having lunch with him. So there he is, and I'm really a little nervous.
Of course.
You know,
Yeah.
so I'm sitting there thinking, well, there he is. You know, I know he knows I love him, but he was very for my being in The Godfather, by the way.
Yeah, he was a big advocate for
He
you.
was
yeah.
an advocate for me. So so then we start talking, and I start telling him a little bit, like I'm doing you, my crazy life, and he was saying, but at the time he started talking a little, but he was eating the chicken cacciatore, you know, which is this Italian dish, and he had the chicken in his hands, and we were in this hospital. He was where you're sitting on the white sheets of a hospital.
You're each sitting on hospital beds,
Yeah,
right,
and I'm
facing
sitting
each other.
here
yeah.
on the other,
yeah.
at the end of the other one, and I'm worried because he's got that chicken cacciatore.
The sauce.
Yeah,
All over.
and I'm kind of, the other things you're thinking about is he's full of sauce, and at the same time, I'm listening to him because this is the greatest, you know, and I want to just say to him, should I get a napkin for him? You know, maybe that'll be kind of insulting or looking a little subservient or whatever. I was thinking about it. I should ask him, you know, somebody. I didn't have napkins either, but I wasn't eating. And then it just started, and I saw him eating, and then I start thinking, while he's talking to me, I thought, what's he gonna do now? Where is he gonna put the chicken cacciatore, what's left of it? I said, what should I do? And then he looked around, and he just put it somewhere, I don't know quite where, but he took his hands, now he has hands that are red from sauce, and he takes them, and he just puts them behind himself like that, and he just wipes them off on the white sheets.
On the white sheets.
And I thought, see, that's what movie stars do. They can do it, and nobody cares.
But you know, so yes, that one, it's definitely what movie stars can do. But also, isn't that a little bit about what made Marlon Brando amazing as an actor? Like you sitting there thinking, what's he going to do next? What's he going to do?
Exactly right. That's what he kept to. He says, do things, he said. Do things like unexpected that they won't expect. He was a master at it.
So I'm curious, when you're doing Serpico, you met with Frank Serpico,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. And you asked him the question that I imagine so many people asked him. This cop who refused to go on the take, and as a result, his life, just so many lives ruined because of his refusal.
But that wasn't the reason. Because when I walked in the room to meet Frank Serpico, I looked in his eyes. And his eyes were so wild. You could see the provocateur. You could see levels of his. I didn't capture that in the part. I wish I did in the portrayal of him, but I saw. And then one time when I was asking questions, once I said yes, because I said yes immediately as soon as I saw his eyes. I had a rental in Montauk, you know,
Long
on the
Island,
beach.
yeah, yeah.
And I was there with him. And we were having a drink and talking and stuff. And then finally I just said to him, Frank, you know, you get the money, whatever, give it to charity or something.
Like, why don't you just take the payoffs and
Why don't you take
give the money
payoffs,
to...
give the money, you know.
Yeah.
He said, and he looked at me and he said, well, if I did that, who would I be when I listened to Beethoven? Who would I be when I listened to Beethoven? I thought, this guy is.
So, you know, I read that, and you wrote about that, and I thought, yeah, that answer would resonate with you almost more than anybody.
Yes.
Because then it goes back. As soon as I read that, I thought, this is a guy who was like, maybe I'll eat, maybe I won't
Yes,
eat.
exactly right.
It doesn't matter, right? Who he was not someone who takes that money.
That's right. And some people are that way. Some
Yeah.
people can make the separation, which is fine, understand it, but not him. He was different in that way.
So
I don't know that I'm like that either. I don't know.
So I'm again struck though. So Serpico looks like a role was actually a role you wanted, right?
Well, yeah, after I saw him.
Yeah.
Because before that, you read a treatment, you don't know. It's all in the dialogue, and we had all those songs.
But I mean, The Godfather Part 2, Scarecrow is really magical movie you make with Gene Hackman. Also directed by Jerry Schatzberg, right?
Yeah.
And Dog Day Afternoon.
Yeah.
These are all things that you said
Crazy.
you said no to all these things. So Dog Day Afternoon, one of the seminal moments of the movie is this beautiful conversation you have on the phone. I love movies where there's a phone conversation,
Yeah,
first of all,
they're
just
good.
in general. But you and Chris Sarandon,
Yeah.
you're playing Sonny fittingly in
Oh,
Dog Day.
Where I got that name from?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can only imagine.
So, but they want to make it different. They want to make it something else. So right there's a part of you that understood that character,
Yeah.
and this is early signs of your. I don't want to say standing up because you and Sidney Lumet were great partners on this,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
but you making how you wanted the character to be is relevant, and you wanted to be heard.
Yeah.
And you were right in this case, definitely.
I was. I think so. I'm still that way, though. I'm still that way. Sometimes I acquiesce just to keep the thing going. That's part of maturity, but also wisdom. You know how far you can go and where to pick your arguments, and that's a choice.
They wanted you guys to kiss on the street, and Sarandon would dress like
Marilyn
Marilyn.
Monroe. I mean, it was audacious. I didn't see it. It didn't happen in
In real life.
in real life, and I don't know that was.
It's preposterous.
I
Yeah,
thought so.
yeah, you were correct. And then you craft this beautiful. You improv that conversation. Right?
Well, we did it. Me and Chris. It was wonderful, and we both got on tape recorders. And Sidney just sat there, and he said, "Do it again." And then we do an improvisation again, and then we do another improv. We had about 4 improvisations. He takes the tapes of those improvisations, and he writes a scene. Yeah, Sidney. It's amazing.
And then the most famous line. It's really a word. In
Attica.
Attica.
Yeah.
Where's that come from?
Well, Attica this is what I love about films, And when films, when you're in a film and you're going out to talk to going out to talk to the people that are all come to watch the bank robbery, and there's hundreds of them, and I'm on my way out to negotiate, and this great AD named Bert Harris,
Assistant director.
assistant director, phenomenal, smart. I loved him, and I've done films with him. And he comes close to me as I'm going. He says, "Al, come here." So I said, "Yeah." He says, "Say Attica." I said, "Attica." I knew of Attica, of course. It was in the news constantly. Everybody knew Attica.
It was a prison riot, and it was
riot.
put
where
down
They were killing people.
put down harshly by
Yeah.
the warden and the guards.
Yeah.
It meant something to people.
Yeah. So I went out there, and he just gave me this direction. So, how do you say Attica? And I just said, remember Attica, remember Attica, remember Attica, because all these cops got guns on me, and I'm looking at Attica. Then they start Attica. Somebody goes Attica.
Man, get over there, will ya? He wants to kill me so bad he can taste it. I'm always gonna kill him. Attica! Attica! Will ya? Attica! 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 Attica!
Next thing you know, they're all screaming, Attica, Attica. Can you believe it? A.D.
AD, and then you
Bert
executed
Harris.
it, and then these 500 extras executed
Oh,
it.
they were in it.
They were in it, yeah.
The extras were always in it in this film. They just were there.
So there are a couple things in the book, and you've touched on it already. We touched on fame is tricky, and it probably hurt your reputation a little bit, right? Because you weren't going to explain yourself, and so people decided what you meant. He thinks he's too good for the Oscars. He thinks he's difficult.
I know, that's the big one. It's in that chapter in there. I even say I go to Forest Lawn and I start telling the people there at Forest Lawn that they're in the graves, you had me wrong. I didn't go to the Oscars because I got mad that I wasn't nominated for the best. It was so insane to find that out only a couple of years ago. I never knew that. I wondered why they treated me so weird when I did come. And I realized.
So why didn't you go?
Oh, at that time I was terrified. I just felt out of place in an environment, which I still do. I get really nervous. And at that point I thought, well, you know, I was working, which is a dumbass excuse. I mean, for God's sakes, you're working. They take care of you. You know, you gotta. So I was working, and I used that as a thing. But I was afraid.
You were
I
scared.
just didn't want to be in that environment. It scared me.
You're not a. I mean, it's not your scene. I mean, it really isn't.
It isn't my scene.
And you're like you are sort of you're an actor and you're out there, but when you play a role, but you're sort of shy. I mean, you're not.
I am shy.
Yeah.
But you know, it's funny because when I went broke, I started going out. You've read that in the thing, and I start doing seminars, and I had the audience right there, and they came to see me, so it was a positive feeling. I started to open up in front of them, telling them stories and stuff like that, and I was a much more performer in an environment like that. It taught me a lot. I learned from that stuff, you know. I learned from having seminars where I talked to the audience and they asked me questions.
Like Elaine May, she understood this. This struck me as really indicative of who you are.
Oh, she was great though.
Yeah. But what did Elaine say to you? So what was that movie you were doing?
I was doing a movie. I still have it.
Right.
One day someone will see it.
So it was a movie that you were proud of, that you'd worked on.
No, I was happy with the play. As a matter of fact, the playwright of it wrote this expression that's in the film. Fame is the perversion of the natural human instinct for validation and attention. Is a perversion. I thought that was a very interesting sentence. It showed Elaine the film. It's a little 52-minute film I made with my friends, and I was afraid to go out with it a little bit. I thought it was kind of brutal and too avant-garde, whatever.
But what did Elaine say to you? Remember?
What did Elaine say to me? I showed her the film, and she said, "Yeah, it's good. Yeah." She said, "Don't show it to anyone."
Because?
She says, "You don't know how famous you are.
You have to learn how famous you are.
You have to learn how famous you are."
You think you have now?
Yeah.
Well,
now I'm trying. I'm writing a book. What do you want from me? I actually put a tie on.
You put a tie
to
on
see
yeah.
you. That's what famous guys do. I think that is I've crossed that. Sometimes I am ready to unfold a little. It's better. It's more fun to be with people. And yeah, I'm fine with it. People, I always sign. I always take pictures with anybody.
But you figured out, and it is a trick. I mean, it's not a trick. It's actually honest. But figuring it out is the trick of how do you be incredibly famous and still be Al Pacino.
Yeah.
Still be that guy who grew up in the South Bronx.
Well,
right?
you got to become Al Pacino again yourself. See, and once you become yourself, then it's okay. You're going to be. I show the world myself.
It just strikes me you could not have pulled that off. You couldn't have done that if you were still drinking.
If I was still drinking,
Yeah.
no, I couldn't have done it. No, I'd have gone down the drain. I just heard something Jack Kerouac said that I thought was interesting. He said, someone said about him, he had a very tragic ending with his mother and booze, but he was, great writer. And he just said, I'm embarrassed by celebrity. I'm embarrassed by that. What does that mean? And he never partook in it, and he went and drank himself into that place. I guess the fear is not my fear, but I do think it's multi-level. Very interesting.
You were embarrassed a little bit by this.
I was a little embarrassed. Yeah, I remember being embarrassed as a youngster too when I did certain things in my life and with other people.
So what made you? How did you know you were drinking too much? I mean,
Charlie helped me with that a lot. My mentor, Charlie Lott.
your acting teacher too. I mean, you really,
My acting teacher, my everything.
your friend, your best friend.
I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm here because of Charlie. And my grandfather, by the way. And I'll give Marty Bregman a little thumbs up there. It's big time stuff he's done for me. But Charlie told me, and he said, you don't know that you're drinking. You don't know it, Al.
You think he said, you think everybody does this.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
You
right.
don't know there's a whole world of people.
Yeah,
who
there's
don't-
people who don't do
who
this.
don't do this every night.
They wind up like this every night.
And you mention it in the book, and there's your manner of some of your most famous roles. The movie that you won an Oscar for, Sound of a Woman. There's a world of people who thought, especially when they heard that you'd been drinking, where they just thought, well, obviously Al Pacino does cocaine every day.
Oh God, no!
Yeah.
Never did cocaine in my life. That's the truth.
So that
That's so
intensity,
Yeah.
that's you. That's you.
Yeah, that's me.
So the drinking or whatever drugs you took too, those were to bring you down, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. To calm.
Alcohol is a depressant,
Yeah.
and like literally, it brings you down.
And how'd your life change when you stopped? First of all, how hard was it? To
Well, it
stop?
got a little worse for a while. It really was
Yeah.
terrible. I had problems, but then eventually, thank God, it got there, and now I realize it does damage to your brain too.
Yeah,
But,
people.
but I'm an old fella, I mean, I feel like a boy. I was saying something so strange to the one that was doing my hair for Lear. I kept saying, and when I have my hair now, and I go out, and someone takes a picture of me, all you see is like a white. I look like a white hydrant, white fire hydrant. It's all hair here, and so I just say I don't feel I'm gray yet. I don't want to be gray. Isn't that weird? I said because I'm that guy in the book cover. Still I feel connected to being like a boy,
Yeah.
younger. Yeah, let's say 20 appeals to me.
You could, they have ways of getting rid of the gray. I just want to point that out to you.
I know. I know a few people, and they're my idols. They got rid of it, and it's there. And nobody says anything. I don't want to mention names, but I got thinking,
It wouldn't.
if he can do it, why can't I do it? But I get there, and then I back off.
It would look. You're all right.
Yeah,
I think
but,
I think it looks good. I think it looks. It also. It's not that it looks good. It looks like you. It looks honest. It looks
Really,
authentic.
I've grown into it or out of it,
Yeah.
and it's acceptable.
One thing that that I'm sure will catch people off guard when they read the book is how close we all came to losing you over COVID.
Yeah. Out of this world. I mean, I was here and then I wasn't. Now, people who faint have that, I think, sometimes in work, but where it came from. And I remember Michael, who's here, he sort of was the nurse who was taking care of me. I was dehydrated, so I was getting hydrated. And I was there.
You'd already been diagnosed with COVID.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I had it big time. And I'm staying home. I'm not going to any hospital, So I'm there, and I'm looking at this guy who I thought was a pretty nice guy, and I didn't remember his name.
And he was giving you fluids.
Yeah, and he was from Europe, Czech, all right. And I wanted to talk to him, and I wanted to call him by his name. And that's the last thought I had. And then I opened my eyes, and there were 6 paramedics in my living room. There was an ambulance outside my door. There were 2 doctors there looked like they were spacesuits, because it was very powerful at that time.
It was pretty early in the
It was
COVID.
really early in the epidemic. And I looked at this, I thought, oh, am I still alive? I thought, it looks like I may be on some planet or something, because they're there. Isn't it not? You can imagine the 2 doctors, head to toe, they got something on.
They look like
them.
astronauts.
It's always the
Yeah.
astronauts, And then I realized, no, what happened? And the nurse said, my pulse stopped. Now, I don't think my pulse stopped. Now, I could have been under I must have been under longer than I thought, but what happened is they were there, and I thought I had passed away, but I didn't. Because how could they get there? All these people in my living room would have to have taken it 5 minutes or something. I can't be under 5 minutes.
It doesn't really matter whether technically you were close to death or not. You felt it. And
I
you
did. I really did.
And did it change you?
Well, a little bit. Everything changes you a little. You learn a little something from it.
Well, I mean, it's a
I
very...
just want to. You don't want to be dead.
No, you definitely...
If that's the end,
Given-
you got to think about other things, man. Where we're going, All I know is I don't know. I don't know anything.
But there's some, you had a very abrupt look at potential quick mortality.
I did. It really. I wrote about it.
Yeah.
I think part of it is why I wrote the book. Possibly. Now that you mention it, it was so real, and I didn't see any light. I didn't see anything at all. But I love. There's a speech in Hamlet where he says, "To be or not to be," and then when he talks about leaving the earth when you die, he says, "No more. No more." How about that? Oh,
You haven't
I like
played.
that.
You haven't played Hamlet.
No, I haven't.
But Shakespeare
But I'm
is-
ready to do it now in front of you.
Shakespeare is was very important to you. Has
right,
been.
yes, of
Richard
course.
III played it again. You did the movie Looking for Richard, which is really well worth seeing. I think especially for anybody who isn't facile with Shakespeare.
Yes.
It's a nice way in.
Yes.
And you just finished a movie where you are the lead.
Yeah, I know.
You're King Lear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The bones are going through it.
So that suggests to me that you're not looking to return. Your co-star in Scarface, F. Murray Abraham,
Yeah.
was sitting here opposite a very lovely guy, and
Yeah, he's
was
great.
sitting opposite from me 2.5 years ago, and he said if he could write it, he would drop dead on stage.
Yeah. You sort of feel that way. Like when I'm saying, well, what am I going to do next? Because you get older, and I guess parts start to get, it's all different. You look at the world different, you look at your roles different. But yeah, I mean, I would say that I want to go out. One of my idols growing up, because I read a lot about actors from the past, and one was Edmund Kean, an English actor who was, he was out of this world, and his life was out of this world. So much so, I mean, they burned the theater in Boston down because they knew he was coming, because he was in a scandal, and he came and he was drinking and he was young. And the Indian tribe was so enamored with him, they took him in. And he became a chief. And when he came back to London, he was forgiven years later. And he did Othello, or King Lear, I don't know which, as an Indian chief. And he died on the stage.
That's what I know about him. So you're not,
Yeah.
you're not,
I wanted to do his life story once when I was very young.
but you're not retiring.
I what?
You're not retiring.
Oh, I can't retire, no. Why? Where would I go?